Welcome back to Growth Unleashed, the podcast for pet brands that want to grow smarter without relying on paid ads. I'm Matt, founder of Bubblegum Search.
And I'm Louis, SEO manager here at Bubblegum. And last week we were covering trust and why it's so important for pet parents.
Yes.
This week we're going to branch out into the topic of brand authority. So let's start with the obvious. Matt, what is the difference between trust and brand authority for you?
Yeah, so the way I look at brand authority is kind of more of like an umbrella term where trust is integrated into that and part of it. So you could think of it like trust plus visibility and brand recognition. But really, brand authority for me is like being top of mind in the consumer's mind. If you think of anything, it could be pizza, and who's the first brand that comes to mind? And for me, it's Domino's Pizza.
Yeah, same.
But point being is like brand authority is like it's a kind of, I guess, a mix of those things. Like how visible are you? How recognized are you? And are you typically the brand that comes to mind when people think of a certain topic, service or product?
Yeah, so I guess in Google's eyes as well, we're kind of looking around the web, essentially. Like the brand authority comes from where else is talking about you, not just from your own kind of brand or your own site.
So, with that said, what can brands show on their website that confirms that they are legitimate, not just to the pet parents, but to Google?
Yeah, so obviously the place to start with kind of building your brand authority is your own website, and some of the easy ways to show that credibility to Google are, as we covered last week, I think kind of user-generated content, pictures, reviews, all of those are top tier in terms of kind of, signaling trust and credibility to both pet parents and to Google, more importantly. Beyond that, I think there's some, Google's over the last few years has been massive on expertise and kind of showing that expertise on your website. And so there's things you can implement from, you can have an as seen in feature on your website that's like where you've been published or who's talked about you. You could, if you've got vets that are kind of talking on your blogs, contributing expert opinions, make sure that they have author bios. You might link to their LinkedIn. You might even link to their own website or kind of page on the team if that's what they are.
Yeah, definitely. And that because you could drill down deeper, right? So at that point, so an author bio on a particular blog or article is great, but if you then link back to a deeper page about that particular author and their expertise, then it's great for the users and for Google to understand at a deeper level.
Absolutely. And then there's more niche things potentially, like for example, if you're a pet food brand who has to be certified or jump through certain hoops to sell your food, then those certifications and kind of badges, or maybe you won an award, those are all things that absolutely kind of show to Google that you are, verified and trusted and credible. And
then really it goes back to what you were saying. It covers all of those key points within EAT, which is like experience, expertise, authority, and trust. And so, all those like badges and awards that you just mentioned covers all those off.
Absolutely. And one final thing that I just think, especially given what we're seeing happen with Google's search results pages in terms of, the myriad of features that are now showing up, people also ask AI overviews, shopping, images,
carousels.
If you want to kind of start tackling those as well, you can use schema code on your website. So just as a quick rundown, schema code is basically a bit of code that you can add into your page. It doesn't show to the user, but it essentially talks directly to Google. They're really useful for getting featured in kind of SERP features, but also just in verifying yourself to Google as a kind of entity. For example, organization schema you could put on your homepage, and that allows you to list everywhere, all of your social profiles and everywhere else that's kind of officially your brand.
Yeah, it allows Google to connect the dots in that
exactly
in that sense,
exactly.
doesn't it? And we were saying this recently with some of our clients where the shift has gone so extreme with the amount of SERP features now appearing for any Google query, pushing the traditional links further down, that just simply by maximizing the amount of relevant schema that you have on your site allows you the biggest chance to increase the amount of visibility that you get before the click, right?
Yeah, and the more you're talking to Google through the schema, the more authoritative it's going to see your brand ultimately.
I love that.
So that's a few ideas of how you can kind of tackle it yourself on site. But in terms of off-site brand authority, what do you think Google and other large language models, for example, are looking for? Where do they want to see you?
Yeah, so it's a big topic in itself, but really the brand authority is built across 3 key areas. So it's the earned, owned, and paid media.
Yeah.
Now it doesn't matter like how people hear about you. What really matters is that they do hear about you, and that they trust what they hear and what they see. So I mean, as you know, like at Bubblegum Search, we specialize in the earned and owned part of that equation. But look, I mean, paid certainly still plays its part within the strategy. It could be that you're remarketing. It could be that you're amplifying certain bits of content, especially if they've done well organically. Or it could be a tactic such as knowing that there's a certain publication where your audience hangs out and pays attention to, partnering with them and doing a newsletter sponsorship or a series of newsletters with them. So it's perfectly fine, and these are all legitimate ways of building brand authority. It's just, as for ourselves, as you know, like our emphasis is on the brand authority that we build on our own assets and where we earn them. And so brand authority can be built in many ways, and like the goal isn't really to choose one as such. It's to move the needle on the actual brand signals that ultimately drive leads and sales. So, for example, if it's owned, you can do it through content marketing and amplifying your own content and getting right in front of the right audience. And if it's earned, it's finding out where the audience hangs out and then, partnering with those sites or those, or getting media attention on those sites and creating influence there, where your audience hangs out. And ultimately that shows up in more branded search, higher branded search volume, more high quality backlinks. Like these are all the kind of KPIs that you can monitor, but ultimately the correlation with brand authority, no matter how it's built, is that your non-branded keywords will start to increase over time. You'll see more traffic, and that can be non-branded and branded, but ultimately it's a higher quality of traffic that leads to more leads and sales.
Yeah, and they feed into each other, don't they? So, the more branded traffic you see, the higher your rankings go for the non-branded terms.
Yeah.
And the higher you show up for the non-branded terms, the more visibility your brand gets.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And I think one of the key things kind of within those pillars of marketing in terms of building brand authority is consistency.
Yeah, definitely.
So a lot of people will maybe think about getting one thing to go viral, and that's great. We're not saying that going viral isn't great.
No, that would be nice.
It would be nice, but consistency is more valuable. I think if you can keep on showing up in the relevant places, keep on pushing out that owned content that you're creating. You'll keep that effect going, and you'll slowly compound, build interest in your brand.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose that goes for like the owned and earned. So again, if you're kind of building authority through your own content and distribution, like it takes time to build up. And again, if you're doing certain like PR campaigns and you're pushing your content and stories to, again, certain relevant publications where the audience hangs out, fine. Like if you get good backlinks or good mentions, fantastic. But it's really, as you say, the consistency of that. Like, are you consistently showing up and becoming top of mind to that audience over a longer period of time and not just a week or a month. So yeah, absolutely, it's critical. Cool. Okay, so leads on to our next part. So if I'm a pet brand founder and I'm listening right now, what can I do this week to start building real brand authority?
So I think if you're looking at the next week, you want quick, actionable items. For me, the first steps of building brand authority on your site would be, as I mentioned, the user-generated content, whether that's reviews or pictures, videos, anything like that is super valuable and really helps to show credibility to Google. I think if you could implement a banner or a page on your website that would show off publications you've been featured in, if that's something if you have the features, that's absolutely valuable.
100%. And again, that kind of ties in what we were just saying about like marrying up all the great stuff you might be doing in the earned sense offsite, and tying it in back to the on page as well, because I mean, obviously people will see where you've been featured, right, in those certain publications, but plenty of people won't have seen that. So when you go on to the website and there they are, the logos of all the publications and places that you've been featured, it carries that expertise and trust right through to, and of course it's good for Google as well.
Absolutely. And I think the other things we covered were implementing schema on any pages that could have it. So I think that's like organization schema and review schema in particular for building brand authority, but maybe a topic for another day. But there's a whole host of other schema that you can add to gain more visibility. And finally, I think going back to that kind of idea of expertise on the website in terms of the people that are contributing. So if you've got vets who are helping write content for you, you want to shout about that and you want to link back to their page, their LinkedIn, basically anything that will signal to Google that, yes, we do have real experts that are, producing this content. Yeah,
and I guess from my side, the only additional point I would make is kind of tying up what we've spoken about. I would start with the owned side of it, your own content, because it's the most straightforward in terms of you have that control over it, of course. But I mean, week one is week one, but I would just simply make a start to the content marketing engine that you need to build brand authority. And of course that takes a long time, like months, if not years, to achieve.
But you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, and exactly. And so week one could be as simple as making a start on a YouTube channel, or a podcast, or perhaps even both. I guess the key part of it is that you just start focusing on creating a content plan that's helpful, expert-led, or even just content that shows more about behind the scenes, about the brand and about the people behind it, to show the audience that you kind of, you humanize the brand, but also that you generally care and have that expertise as well. I mean, and then look from there, of course, over the longer term, you create these long form pieces of content, and then you can take that content and you can clip it into short form content, and then that can distribute on socials such as Reels or on TikTok or YouTube Shorts. And then you have the distribution part of it as well as the long form content. And of course, you can then take that and turn it into a blog post. You can turn it into a newsletter or even a lead magnet. There's so much you can do with that to create this content marketing engine. But yeah, week one is your kind of journey to that owned brand authority.
Yeah, I think maybe if you can, come up with an idea for your podcast or YouTube channel and start mapping out a content calendar in week one, that would be the perfect start.
Absolutely, yeah. Cool. Okay, well look, that's it for this episode. Hopefully it's been giving you a clearer idea of what like brand authority really means, where it shows up, and how to start building it right now. So thanks for watching, and yeah, we'll catch you next time.